Hi, I'm Ryan,
And I'm Taylor.
and we are registered psychotherapists at the Limestone Clinic based out of Kingston, Ontario, here to answer some of your questions.
Yeah, so we pulled people from all different avenues of social media to try to get an idea of what people want to ask us. What do people want to know? These are definitely more general questions than client-based or case-based. But hopefully we can answer some of your questions today and see how far we get. If your questions aren't included today, stay tuned for episode 2. So why don't we get started? A lot of the questions that we got flowing into us was just out of curiosity of, what type of therapy we do, our qualifications and things around training. So Ryan, if you want to, you can get started there. If you want.
All right. Well, I my background is very diverse. I've done kind of all sorts of things, and I fell into therapy kind of by accident. Um, and I decided that I finally kind of decided on what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I was old, and this is just something that I found really easy. Kind of, it was a job that I really enjoyed doing. Um, I took a very unorthodox route. I was grandfathered into the College of Psychotherapy based on my life experience, work experience, and education. And that's not even available to people anymore. So yeah, I went from I started off as a welder, and now I'm a therapist. So, and I've kind of had everything in between. Um, yeah,
What a journey.
yeah, it was. That's one way to put it.
So for myself, I feel kind of similar to Ryan's statement of that I just kind of fell into it in the sense of this is a skill I just felt I naturally had over the years. Feel like people gravitating towards me to talk about things and that I actually enjoyed helping people in that way. So why not just make it a career? So pursued a lot of my background was in behavioral psychology and then transitioning more generally into more trauma work. At the start of my career, I was more focused on working with children and youth. Did a lot of, behavioral type programming for kids displaying, challenging and difficult behaviors and having difficulties managing their mood and things like that. And that kind of just naturally translated into areas of trauma that were just super interesting to me. So that's kind of my area of expertise, I guess, at this point, and a lot of what people tend to see me for at the clinic now. I don't tend to work with kids as much anymore. I'm now leaning more into the adult world to explore there, but a lot of my background is pretty trauma focused right now. So, I think we kind of semi-answered question 2. A lot of the question also leaned towards like why we wanted to be therapists. So it sounds like we kind of already answered that one.
Yeah, kind of. I do want to jump in because your answer sounded way better than mine. Is that I was a camp counselor through high school, and I guess that was the first experience I had with being a counselor, and it was like the best job in the world. Yeah, I didn't get paid, or if I was, it was very little. But I wish I could kind of done that forever. And when kind of opportunities arose to where I kind of had that same connection to just being able to help and being able to invest in people's lives, that's what really kind of brought me into wanting to become a therapist. And so even though, yeah, I started off being a welder because, summer camps don't run all year and doing all that kind of stuff, eventually I did get into working with kids again, like Taylor. And I spent good 10, 12 years working with kids and youth, primarily in a treatment program for addiction. And that kind of led me into Limestone. And so here I am.
So our next question, there was a couple of them that were very similar, being curious if we go to therapy ourselves as therapists and kind of how we manage our own mental health difficulties. I'm happy to start with this one, that there's no hidden secret. I think sometimes people think, that we have some hidden secret or extra knowledge or things like that. But reality is, I feel like we're not immune to life's difficulties either. So we have to take care of ourselves just in the same ways that we advocate for everyone else to do the same. How that looks for us is probably very different. I know myself, like, I need to spend time outside. I like being outside, that element of self-care, being able to recharge with people. I like being around people and being very social, being connected. So those are ways that help me recharge. In terms of therapy, I've definitely been there. I think as therapists, sometimes we carry a bias of therapy's great, go to therapy, but we also speak of it usually out of personal experience of also experiencing it, not just advocating for it. So I don't know how you feel on that one, Ryan, but.
Well, yeah, I call them getting a tune-up, and every once in a while you got to get a tune-up, and I don't think I would be recommending things or suggesting things to people if I wasn't, trying them out myself. So yeah, needing to get a tune-up, because like you said, we're human, believe it or not, and we all have our own stuff, and we're all affected. Like, I don't know if you guys know, but there's this big pandemic thing going on right now, and it's affecting everybody. And therapists, we're not immune from that, and how it affects us, how it affects our families, how it affects our loved ones, our jobs. And so sometimes, we need to reach out for support and help. Taylor, loves to go outside and be around people, and I can only imagine that has been pretty difficult when you're not allowed to be around people, or go outside a lot. So it's for me, I love to go. I love to be outdoors. I love to read. I love to just play with my kids. I love to just find ways to connect to why I want to why I do this. Because some days are harder, and some days are very rewarding, and some of those hard days where it's like, okay, we gotta check ourselves before we wreck ourselves.
Ain't that the truth? But I think you made a really good point, especially around the nature of the world right now. We couldn't even get together to record this. Like, we're in two totally different locations, being able to record this in our own, home version of a home office. And, we do have to maintain a lot of those things that we advocate for. And I think you really highlighted, we wouldn't tell you to do things that we weren't confident in or didn't know that works, whether we've seen it for other people or experienced it ourselves. So I think you really hit the nail on the head with that one there.
Yeah, I used to work as a carpenter too, so that also.
So basically, we're learning here today that Ryan is a jack of all trades.
Well, yeah, I never got really good at anything. It's probably why I've had so many different types of jobs like that. Because I was like, yeah, I should probably be better at this for the amount of time I've been doing it. But therapy was always something that I've been kind of better at. So here we are.
So our next questions revolved a lot around wanting to know, like, in session, like, what are we thinking? What are we writing down? What's going on, and what's the experience for us as therapists on the other side of things? Ryan, do you want to get us started on this one?
Absolutely. It's funny because sometimes clients notice that sometimes I write things down, and really for me, sometimes it's just a word, because I want to be able to remember later. And that, for me, that's just like a prompt. Oh, okay, right. This is something that they talked about, and that I think it's really important that we mention. As into what I'm thinking, wow, that could be all sorts of things. I really do my best to just kind of be, present and in that space with you, and just listening. But I don't know if anyone else has ever experienced this. Sometimes I get these thoughts that are just like, oh, what's for dinner, or something like that. But they're fleeting, but they pop up every once in a while. And it's so like usually what I'm thinking is generally specific to kind of what we're talking about, which I can't really discuss in this format, but it's that's kind of what's going on. But every once in a while, I get this, it's like, oh, I really wish the Leafs played better in the first round of the playoffs, and I'm really disappointed and sad and woo. But most of the time, it's really just about connecting and being in that space with you.
I think that's a really good example of going back to like we're humans too, right? Our brain can wander for even a second, but even in general senses, what I try to do is have what I refer to as like my therapist's like third ear. I know Ryan, you refer to it often as like the spidey senses. The things that we're trained to look for and that we're trained to help you with. So a lot of the times during these conversations, what's kind of happening is that, third ear kind of looking for things, noticing things. Is there, patterns I'm seeing in things that you're talking about, things like that. I think agreeing with Ryan in terms of the what am I thinking, that's usually it. That's a very big question. But on the side of like, what am I writing down? If I'm writing anything down, it's generally just prompts or reminders for me for the note that I have to write and document after the session. I think a lot of people get kind of misinformed on like movie standards of, the classic, like, and writing down kind of an interaction that goes on in the movies. But a lot of the times it's nothing judgmental or anything like that. It might be like, got angry at the grocery store, something that I'm just trying to remember based on the conversation, because we do see a lot of clients in a day. And it's helpful for us to be able to document efficiently and effectively. So that would be generally the kind of things that I would be writing down.
I generally tend to not write a lot down because my training was really in about listening and being present and focusing, and so much communication is nonverbal. And if I'm sitting there like doing this, or like even having my clipboard up and going like this, I'm not being present, I'm not looking, and I'm not really listening as well. And so if it is something I'm like, this is really important, I gotta jot this down. Sometimes I'll even say, I need to write this down because I think it's really important. Or I'll just like I said, I'll like a word. And for me, later in the day, when I finally get to sit down and type this up, it comes off the light bulb.
Yeah, I definitely can see how documentation could get in the way, right? If your therapist is just, writing down everything you're saying, that would impede a lot of the connection that happens naturally in the therapy experience. So definitely it's usually, like you said, just a word or two just to help our brains when it comes to documentation stuff.
Yeah, it's also like, if I find it can be a barrier to people who may have had trouble with the law, and they see their therapist sitting there like writing something out, just like a ticket or a statement or something, like they had an interaction with an officer, and that can cause like a shutdown. Or people who have had serious mental health concerns in the past and have had to be hospitalized, and that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying just to kind of listen, and that's not what our role is. So I try to shy away from it as much as possible. But I'm getting older, and I sometimes forget things, and so I do every once in a while need to jot it down.
Well, and as a side note, I would say to that, like if it is a trigger or something that you're noticing when you're in your therapy experience with your therapist, that you're like, this makes me nervous every time you go to write something down, I would bring that up in your therapy. That could be an awesome opportunity for learning for both people. Maybe you learn why this is so triggering for you, what's going on. And there's also some transparency probably from the therapist being like, actually, I'm kind of just writing down these general things or kind of what's going on. It actually be a really great opportunity for some exploration as well. So even, like you mentioned, Ryan, all kinds of things can come up around that. And if you're noticing that, I would bring it up. So some of the other questions that we got, Ryan, were around, do we get tired of listening to people's problems? Do we have a personal reaction? Like, do we get frustrated when people don't take our advice? What are your thoughts on that?
Never do. No, I I know that when I was a young therapist, however old I was, but like young in the field, I would get upset and frustrated. Um, I found out that through my own kind of work is that I think I was personalizing it too much and like saying like, oh well, they're not listening to me, they don't respect me, they don't care about what I have to say. Um, and so it was really frustrating, and it took some time for me to realize that no, it's not about me. Um, and it also opens up another avenue to discussion, saying like, oh hey, like I noticed that you're wanting to change this certain thing. You and I kind of collaborate, we work together, we talk about different ways to possibly change that, and then you don't do it. So I don't know what to do with that. Is there something I'm missing? Like what's going on? Um, because if this isn't a job where you're just like, I'm just going to tell you what to do. You do it and you'll be fine. Because that's not how life works most of the time. And sometimes that's what people want, but it's not necessarily helpful.
Well, I think that speaks to a lot of truth. I can definitely relate to that, where early on, I think a lot of us in this field, any helping field, go in feeling like a superhero, like we're just going to swoop in and fix everything. And you learn quite quickly that it's actually not in our hands. We're more of a guide, really. And these are the things we can do. These are the ways we can help. We can process difficult material with you. We're more of a guide than the actual like solution, right?
Yeah.
And I think it takes some learning on sometimes both ends, sometimes the client and sometimes myself as a therapist. And I think I did learn that quite early on, that it's not a superhero mentality. So in terms of, levels of frustration or getting tired of listening, no, I think that's a big part of how I recharge as a person, is being connected, like I previously mentioned. So I thrive and I enjoy the work that I do. So definitely in terms of tired of listening, definitely not. But my personal reaction when there's a bit of a barrier there, I think very similar to what you said, Ryan, and I treat it kind of like an opportunity to explore. Like I'm noticing this, but this is what's happening. What's happening from here to here. And kind of worth exploring, because likely there's really valuable information there that can help, progress even further. So I think it's more about being curious than making assumptions a lot of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And just kind of being open to where that goes. And it was very freeing to be like, this isn't about me, right? Stop making this about me. And just being able to be in that space and help people walk through stuff, because there's a reason they're not kind of following through with the collaboration and the plan that you guys kind of came up together with. Let's hash it out. Let's see what's up.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing how much you learn about yourself, even providing therapy for other people.
Oh, yeah.
So this next question was around how we manage to keep different client information separate in our mind. Like, how do we remember the difference between different clients, remembering different details of all the different clients we see in a day, let alone a week. Yep. And I think for me, a lot of it is taking advantage of the note taking that we already do, like in our job. Sometimes at the start of the day, I'll review and refresh on some things that I chatted about the week prior with clients. I generally find when you get brand new clients is where you're reading things more off a page from their intake and trying to take in a lot of information at once. Whereas once I've gotten to know people, there's more of, I recognize that person. It's like, okay, this person is here for this. This is the general kind of things. I associate them more with the conversations that we have rather than just minor details. So I think a lot of it comes from just relationship building and getting to know. It's just like, you probably have a lot of family and friends in your life and you don't confuse them, right? Because you build that relationship. and you've kind of associated certain things with the person. So
Yeah.
I find once you build that connection, it's pretty reasonably easy to keep it kind of, separated and compartmentalized in my brain. But it's more the start. If you have a lot of people starting in 1 week, or you're getting a lot of, more paper information than person information, it can be challenging sometimes, and you need that kind of refresher. And that's where the notes become really valuable to us.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just being able to jumping into a new session, and you go through the intake documents and stuff like that, and you try to kind of get your head wrapped around some stuff, but this is a person, this isn't a piece of paper, and this isn't they're not issues, they're people. And so it's trying to also like reading this, but also hearing and listening to kind of stuff, because sometimes like they say, well, this is what I want to focus on, this is what I want to kind of work on, but after a session or two, you're realizing this isn't the core issue, there's something else going on. And so yeah, we use our prep period. I use my prep period. So was Taylor, apparently. Going through some of the notes for the day, and just trying to get a good understanding. But like once you've met with someone a couple times, it's like you build that relationship, and you know, oh, how, or so and so, how's the job, or oh yeah, you went camping this weekend, how was that? And kind of just go from there.
Yeah, because I think it's just like everybody in our life. Like I kind of mentioned, like, for example, Bob down the road has a wife, has this, talks about this, enjoys talking about this. And, you remember those things, just like you would the difference between Bob down the road and Brenda the other end, right? You recognize that. I think it's pretty programmed into us naturally. So the fact that, you and I mentioned we thrive off connection, and we enjoy that, and we take a lot of value in that it kind of adds that extra reinforcement to us that it feels good, and it's really connected. So it's even easier sometimes to remember that person-to-person contact and all that kind of details, and sorting that out.
All right, guys, thanks for checking us out.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in if you made it this far. We wanted to keep it brief today, answer a couple questions to start. If your questions weren't included, we'll include them in the next one. So stay tuned for that. On the next slide, you'll see all the information, how to reach Ryan or myself, as well as you can always go to any of the Limestone Clinic social media pages and post more questions. If you want us to include different stuff for future videos, we'd be happy to answer them within reason and within limits of confidentiality that we have to abide by. But we'd be happy to have any other questions or things, like even if something we said today prompted something else, feel free to reach out. In the next slide, you'll see how to reach us. But thanks a lot for joining us. Bye.
Bye.